thank you so much for following up with this edition of LongHaulPartner.com video blog series. This edition is part 2 of shipping contracts, driver turnover, carrier profit. Are they related? As you may recall, at the end of part 1, we were just getting to what we were facetiously referring to as the better way solution. Now, under the better way freight contracting regime, carriers would agree to abandon exclusive freight contracts with shippers and receivers. Ooh, scary, huh? Yeah. This monopolistic contract system would be replaced by good old free markets. It's counterintuitive to carrier management today because the current thinking suggests that if I can monopolize a market segment, I will make more money with less risk than if I don't. It's hard to disagree with this logic, as it worked well historically for J.P. Morgan, E.H. Harriman, and other successful barons, John D. Rockefeller, yada yada yada. The flaw, of course, in this logic is that no one today actually has a perfect monopoly. Attempting to garner market segment pseudo-monopolies simply results in carriers cutting each other's throats for competing contracts while they're still stuck with underutilized resources that drag profits down in order to service those same contracts. Now, the better way requires that all freight be dispensed through independent freight brokers, except for the crooks, which the better way will put out of business anyway. Now, most big carriers have their own logistics and brokerage firms anyway. Those are suitable, those work. It doesn't matter who the broker is, but it does matter that the brokers are fair and open with independents and anybody else who wants to carry a load. That's the only way the free market and this system that I'm proposing could work. No carriers should contract privately or exclusively with shippers and or consignees. All loads should be selected by drivers. Get rid of the driver managers. We don't need those guys. It's a waste of money. All loads should be selected by drivers working independently with independent brokers. Driver-based compensation, in turn, should be allocated as a percentage of gross line haul rate or percentage of load. It doesn't matter which. Now, driver compensation is directly related to load profitability, which is to say, carrier profitability. Both driver and driver's carrier are now motivated to obtain the best possible loads on a more or less level playing field. The more creative, more independent, more business-savvy drivers will make the most money, working with the best brokers who will also make good money. And the carriers competing for and winning those drivers will profit the most. Huh? Is that the American way? The customer, now addicted to contract services, trained in a system that really isn't working that well, will also benefit from this wide open, competitive free market freight allocation system as they learn to contract with the best independent brokers instead of directly with monopolistic carriers. The final part of the equation is for the large carriers to consider revising their business model and begin converting company drivers, at least over-the-road drivers, to owner-operators, either fully independent with their own authority or more likely lease back to the carrier. Although I'm not talking about the current typical carrier leaseback deals we see today where thousands of guys are going broke. That's not what I'm talking about. Now, the driver is not only responsible for his truck's revenue, but is also responsible for his equipment, maintenance, risk, and cost. This means that the driver compensation must be a percentage of the line haul rate or a percentage of gross to the load, doesn't matter which, as long as the driver income is tied directly to load profitability. Get away from this per mile nonsense. You now have a self-motivating, mostly self-managing, sustainable, profit-seeking business model requiring far less, maybe no business development administrators, driver managers, marketing expense, etc. The success of the trucking business will fall squarely on the back of the driver, where it's always been anyway. Only now, the driver can benefit financially as well. And when he or she does, so does everybody else. Now, I suspect that under the auspices of the better way, the cream of drivers will rise happily to the top of the food chain. The dregs, if you will go away, and the driver micromanagement so necessary today to manage the lowest common denominator of driver will begin to become far less expedient. The only driver management necessary will be for coordination and problem solving with more highly motivated, successful driver entrepreneurs, not a 365, 24/7 babysitting routine. Drivers will tend to become more business savvy entrepreneurs, running his or her own driver Inc. within the nurturing culture of the carrier. In the case of the lease owner operator, which I suspect will be the most common scenario, the most affordable anyway, the carrier supplies the investment capital, equipment, tires, parts and fuel purchasing capability, all on a large economy of scale basis. The drivers do the rest. The backbone of trucking has been and is the driver. Without the driver, the whole thing shuts down. The better way converts today's driver back into the important resource he or she is, rather than the nuisance they are sometimes considered to be. The driver is the key and ought to be respected, acknowledged, and fairly compensated as such. Humans tend to rise or sink to the level of expectation demanded. If carriers expect more, demand more, and compensate commensurately, carriers will get more from their drivers, and the drivers will get more for themselves. The better way is a win-win-win scenario for everyone. Now, carriers can't compensate drivers more today under the old contract way. They're simply saddled with too high an underused resource burden. It's time to get out of the box and do some creative thinking. Maybe we'll just break it worse. Maybe we'll fix it. Either way, we know it's broken the way it is, and we ought to at least attempt to fix it. If we break it worse, we'll fix that. But doing nothing is not a viable long-term option. There you have it, the better way nirvana. I'd like to see carriers stop having to babysit and micromanage drivers to insanity just because industry policies ensure hiring a high percentage of drivers who must be micromanaged. Respect your drivers. Expect more. Demand more. Turn American independence and creativity loose to hit the pavement running. Create more wealth for everyone. Truckers historically are independent, resourceful, hard-working people. Let them run. Why do we suppose Landstar and some others have been successful with their business model? I think the best trucking business model will rely on American exceptionalism, not babysitting dullards and carrying wasted, unused resource expenses. Give a little to gain a lot. Just saying. Hey, thanks for checking in. LongHaulPartner.com.